Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Epic Meta Podcast Show. George, how's it going?
A little bit of a headache.
We'll push through it, make it quick, and hopefully you'll be all right at the end.
Yeah, it's not too
Awesome.
bad. I've had worse.
So today we'll be discussing The Matrix, at the minimum, the first and the second movie. But I'm not sure if you know this, but it's gonna be a quadrilogy by the end of probably next few years. The fourth one is being made right now as we speak.
With the same actors?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like everybody, but at a minimum, Keanu Reeves is coming back as Neo, and I forgot her name is coming back as Trinity. Possibly more, but we don't know yet.
Carrie-Anne Moss? Is that her name?
Yeah. Yep. So it's gonna be trilogy, but quadrilogy. So I don't know how it's gonna break down. It might be a separate thing, but I don't know it either. So yeah.
Well, it seemed like they wrapped everything up in the
Yeah.
last
Yeah,
movie.
it's gonna be interesting. I'm hoping it's like a new thing, like completely kind of is on its own, and then tangent out to other stories. So
You sound a little subdued today.
yeah, I just haven't had my coffee yet. I mean, I had one coffee, but it's not the normal kind I have, so it's not working as well. So
It's not the normal
still,
kind. What?
yeah, I ran out, so I'm drinking some like pre-packet coffee thing. It's hard to explain,
Instant
but
coffee?
similar to that, but it's you don't get it from not the kind that you're thinking about. This come in a packet with cream and sugar already mixed up. So yeah, not this. It's not as strong as the normal ones that I drink. So
Okay. So you're operating on insufficient caffeine at this point.
yeah, yep,
All right. Well, push through it.
yep.
We've got a big audience out there to satisfy.
Yeah. All right. Well, with regards to the Matrix, I tried to watch it as much as I can without like any memory of the first time, but it's impossible. So it's like all the twists and turns. It's just not the same. But I remember how I felt the first time I watched it. I was just blown away. Uh, Loved every bit of it, and was just so intrigued with this whole universe. And that's what they got so right with Chelsea. They did a amazing world building in a short, kind of normal runtime of a movie. That kind of make you want to come back and see more. And that's how I felt for for a long time. I mean, I kind of watch it too much, but I still remember, like watching it again this time. I still remember like, aha, this is where it was that I felt, like, oh my God. Um, how was it for you?
Yeah, it's particularly the first one. It is it's just an amazing movie in terms of storyline, in terms of addressing higher philosophical issues, in terms of melding that with action adventure and really neat, innovative action sequences and just plot lines and characters. It was all really good. And the movie, the first Matrix, the first movie in the trilogy has a unique feel to it that that is really. I mean, it's hard to put my finger on it, but I I feel like that the feel that I got from the first movie was somewhat lacking in the second, and more so in the third. There,
Yeah,
I do like the second movie quite a bit, although there's problems with it. And
yeah,
the third one is obviously the weakest link.
yeah. I think the in the trilogy, the first one was the strongest, and this, yeah, I feel the same way. The second one was all right. I liked it because it expanded on the world building, so you kind of
Hmm.
understand what's going on a little bit more. And then the third one, it's just an I would say it's a normal. At that point, you kind of understand everything, kind of normal. There's nothing else to reveal, although the ending was quite good to me. So yeah, the first one was just it only it just blew your mind apart, basically mind blown watching that movie. So it was really good. Um, I was looking at this stuff like when I was kind of reviewing this stuff. The movie came out in 1999, which means it's 21 years old. So that's how old this movie is.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you realize that or not, but it's not that new anymore.
Yeah, it holds up amazingly well though. All the special effects are really good, I think.
Mm,
And just when the movie came out, when the first movie came out, it was really groundbreaking. I thought
hmm
they really hadn't seen anything like that before.
Yeah, and it came out of nowhere too. Like I remember seeing a trailer a little bit. I didn't really get it, but it was just like, let's go see a movie kind of thing. And me and my buddies went to college and saw it, and I thought it was amazing. I don't remember afterward. Then I remember, like a whole thing about it, and people wanted more, but it took a long time for them to get the second one to come out and follow up. Not sure at the time, I think they had to prove that they were making enough money, and the trilogy was not. The idea was not there. They gotta get through the first one. So
Yeah, the first movie
yeah.
is very complete in itself. Um,
Mm,
they built the world. There was a definite story arc, definite hero's journey story arc that we've discussed. See our hero's journey episode if you want more information on that. Um, Not talking to you, I'm talking to our audience. But but really, I mean, a word for word literal interpretation of the hero's journey, but done in a very 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 satisfying way. So
yeah. The Wachowski, of course, after this movie went on to make other things, but they actually they did another movie. And I was watching another YouTuber kind of reviewing this. I mean, I felt I felt a little bit unsatisfied and I guess a little bit jarring as to why the same creators that I love made this other thing that's terrible, and it's Jupiter Ascending. I'm not sure if you ever seen that. Forget
no,
it's
I
yeah.
saw Cloud Atlas though, which I thought
Yeah, I did.
was
I watched Cloud Atlas too, and I just didn't like it as much as Jupiter said as the Matrix. I think it's very different in regards to the material, and I think it's not like Cloud Atlas based on a book, and it's very hard. I think you need a TV show format or a medium to kind of do Cloud Atlas correctly because it's just too much. But I've never read the book. I don't know anything about it, so it's probably why I didn't feel very connected when I was watching that movie.
yeah.
So
There were a couple of things about it that were talking about Cloud Atlas now. Yeah, it was a long movie with lots of different moving parts, and Hugo Weaving was in it, the guy who played Agent Smith in The
mm,
Matrix, and he has a very distinctive look, and it's hard to accept him as a different character,
mm,
especially in a Wachowski movie.
yeah,
So that was immersion breaking.
yeah.
Although
He was not the only one. There was others though. I was just like, what is going on? Like I couldn't. I couldn't just be with the movie, and yeah, it was really they needed a different format, either TV show or mini series or something.
well, I don't know about
To
that. I appreciate the effort on their part. I think
mhm,
it was it was a good um, it was a valiant effort. It just I guess since we saw the Matrix and we we're used to what the Wachowskis were doing with the Matrix, it's hard to
Yeah.
then go into a different movie with some of the same actors and not compare it, to
Yeah.
what worked so well the first
They
time.
did so well with the Matrix. You need this. Yeah. Your expectation of them is like, the bar is this high, and when they fall short, it hurts a little bit more. So, at least that's how I felt. I was just like, what? This cannot be the same people. What are they doing? That's how I felt watching some of the other stuff, and especially with Jupiter Ascending, it's really bad. If you can you can do, yeah, you can do analysis on why it didn't work. But the Matrix, whatever they did it right, it's amazing. It's very. I was watching it and looking at the time frame this time,
Mm-hmm.
and at half hour mark, it was like it was already into. It didn't take very long for Neo's story to start. Basically, he takes the first action when he's in his office and he got a package and Morpheus on the phone calling him. Literally called to called him to make a decision. It's about 30 minutes ish, and I was like, wow, that was really concise. And I never felt lost or like what's going on. I was like still with it. I was like, huh, that's really good writing, or editing or everything. Because it takes all that to not lose people when you're writing a mysterious. You kind of at the beginning I was like I kind of don't know what's going on, because they throw the Matrix or word around right until that scene, then they kind of went into it. Um, what did you think about that telephone call, which is kind of infamous now on the internet? There's a lot of skits and remakes of that
Hmm.
in him and his cubicle. I'm not sure if you ever seen it.
Um, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I okay. So the scene where Morpheus calls Matrix or calls Neo when he's sitting in his
Mhm.
office, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like SNL made a sketch about it, but yeah, you might not have seen it.
No, I haven't seen it. Um, yeah, I mean that's the call to adventure, right? Where the
Hmm.
Morpheus is the mentor, Neo is the hero. Morpheus tells him he has to go out on the ledge, and Neo goes out, and he refuses the call because he's afraid to fall off the building. So yeah, I mean, so okay, so there's that scene, and then there's the scene where Neo is being interrogated by Agent
Hmm.
Smith,
Yep.
and
Right after. Yep.
so there's a weird part to that scene where Agent Smith causes Neo's mouth to sort of fuse shut,
Yeah. That was
which
the.
which
Go ahead.
felt somewhat incongruous to the rest of the movie. That one particular scene.
I remember. I don't remember what I feel like, and like now I watch it, I'm like whatever. But the first time I watch it, I'm like, you know, oh my god, like what's going on? That was my first. This is not a normal, action sci-fi movie. This is something else, and that's when I was kind of blown away, because it really got me after that. Because I was like, what? I'm really intrigued now as to what's going on. Obviously, this is not a normal human universe that we know about, and that's when it totally hooked me in.
Yeah,
That
but
specifically that scene, and including the follow up, which is where he planted a bug in him, literally plant a bug in him.
yeah,
Uh,
no, that's the
uh,
same scene.
yeah.
But the bug I could accept, um,
Hmm.
and I can accept the mouth fusing too. It just seemed like nothing like that happened anywhere else in any of the movies. Um,
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the point, right? That whoever he is, he's just not a normal, and they never say they were FBI, right? They just said they were agents.
hmm,
Um, and now that I watch it the second time, I'm like, huh, interesting, because you don't know what kind of agents, they have like a huge file on him, and so in my head, for the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is some kind of elite, FBI government unit kind of thing. But when the movie opened, you saw Trinity do that jump kick,
Hmm.
which I couldn't tell because I was like, maybe she's just good, or the time actually paused and she did like a special, gravity bending move. Like I didn't associate. Now when they jump across the building, that's when you kind of know like something's up here, but you couldn't really pinpoint it. And this is the second time when you're like, uh, people don't do this. I don't care what kind of agents you are, and so it really loop you in. It does that really well. At least for me, that's how I felt. Um, to me, he was just having basically God powers, and I was enthralled with the fact that they can, bend whatever rules they want. But it was such a good line, even how you feel about, taking how you feel about it. It was such a good Mr. Smith line. What
What
I
was the
can't do
line?
it.
Oh,
Um,
how can you? What
what's
what will
good?
you do with a phone call if you can't speak?
Even speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's good is a phone call if you can't, like the way he does it, if you can't speak, it's just amazing how he pulled that off. And
Mm.
then, of course, the Neo freaking out, which you freaked out too. If, like as an audience, I was like, what's going on? And then he woke up from a dream and you thought that maybe you basically felt whatever Neo was feeling. I thought it was really good.
Mhm.
That still hooked me. Watching the second, I'm like, nice. Like Mr. Smith. The more I watch, like as the years goes on, he's by far one of my favorite, if not my favorite, bad guy. Like they did it. They did the Mr. Smith really good, and I like that.
Yeah.
How do you? What do you think about Mr. Smith compared to other, I don't know, famous bad guys that you've seen over the years?
No, Agent Smith is good. I mean, obviously he's single-minded, and he's a machine. Or he's I guess, a program within the computer, and so he's not conflicted. At least in the
Mm,
first movie, he's not, because he was designed for a specific purpose, and he is executing on that purpose.
yeah.
Um, but I guess you could say some conflict does come out, because later on in the movie he talks about how he doesn't like living in the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, in the second and third movies, he is acting contrary to his original programming. He becomes a virus,
Yeah. It's
and
very. Yeah. Go ahead.
well, no, I'm done.
I would say it's very. It's a small scene like what you mentioned that he hates living in the Matrix. And you upon first watching, because the whole movie is so groundbreaking, you're kind of distracted by everything because you're still absorbing it. But like second, third watch, and I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, you do notice that scene when he finally captured Morpheus and he was torturing him for information. He did kind of this is my bad guy speech, kind of just explain my plan kind of thing. It's not the same as other movies, but he did reveal that essentially he was tired of doing his job.
Yeah,
And I thought that up on not the first watching but later watching, I was like, wait, you're a program. You don't feel tired, you don't feel bored. This is not this doesn't make any sense. And later on you could see like the opposite between Neo and Mrs. Smith, right? Mrs. Smith is becoming more, arguably more human. Like he have his own trajectory and make decisions and essentially feels about things a certain way. And Neo is just like, following his programming and discovering his course or his purpose. And I thought that was really well done. But it's very I would say it's very light, right? They don't lay it on top of you and just tell you to look for that. It's something I noticed. I don't know if it was like meant to be noticed, but it just seemed to be. Not only are they opposed, main opposing character, but they also have a different, somewhat similar journey to the center. As eventually they'll meet and fight each other, both figuratively and literally. They fought each other. So that's I thought that was really cool. So
yeah, that was
something.
cool. There were. definitely cool ideas that the Wachowskis were trying to execute throughout this trilogy. I think in terms of a trilogy, though, it was paced. There were problems with the pacing.
Yeah.
The first movie was perfect. It was a perfect three act structure. Um, Never felt like it was dragging. Uh, you know, it got increasingly more exciting towards the end, and then ended in a very satisfying way. The second movie, I felt had some. There were some great scenes in the movie that I really enjoyed. Um, and there were some interesting characters. I thought the Merovingian was interesting,
Hmm.
um, and Seraph and the Oracle, and even the evolution of Agent Smith was
Hmm.
definitely interesting. And there were some great fight scenes. I love the fight scene where Neo is fighting like a million Agent Smiths in the park. I love the beginning fight scene where Neo is fighting those three agents,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's choreographed with the music, and it's really good. And then there's another fight scene where they're in the Merovingian's palace or wherever that is, and
Yes. Yeah.
the, all really cool. But the second movie went on way too long, and they tried to do too many things,
Yeah.
and it didn't follow a normal plot structure. Like I thought when so there's that chase scene on the freeway, which is
Hmm.
also good. But maybe too many action scenes for one
Yeah.
movie. Like
I
maybe
was,
they could have
yeah, they
spread
had
that out.
to correct, correct. I felt the same way. I love the action, so I'm always like, more for it than not for it. But the you're right. The problem is they have too many subplots going, and they could have easily cut down again, focus the story on just, Neo and Mr. Smith, and everyone else is there to
Agent
fill
Smith.
in yeah, Agent Smith. Everyone there is to fill in to fill in the rest of the world building, but you don't have to, because at the time I felt it diverted. It diverted from Neo fighting Agent Smith, which is the core of the story, and um, I felt like Merovingian was another bad guy, and it's not. Uh, I don't know if that was intended or just because he's there to fill in the universe, storytelling wise,
So
but it
he
was
would
distracting.
it would have been more interesting if the Merovingian became the main antagonist of the third movie. But
Mm,
it just never went anywhere with the Merovingian.
correct.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the point I wanted to make was it seemed like the action climaxed in the second movie at the end of that chase scene on the freeway when Neo scoops Morpheus and the Keymaker off of the truck. He's flying to get them, and he does. But then the movie goes on for another half hour after that, and there's another like series of action scenes. And by that time, I was just exhausted. you,
Yeah.
you want to pace the movie to the audience's tolerance. And
Yeah.
if you just keep going past the point where they're exhausted, it really deflates the movie
Yeah.
watching experience, I think.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, one of the fights at the beginning could have been essentially cut or bypass and leave it for something else. Maybe a TV show add-on or something. But yeah, you're right. It was just a little bit too much. Other than that, I of course I'm a fiend for action, so I love all that stuff. The By far, I think my favorite is the highway chase scene because the CGI you can kind of tell the time has been degraded, but the some of the cars exploding and chase stuff that's like people were doing it, and from now until the end of time that part will still be really good because you felt kind of like the danger that Trinity was dealing with. You know how it's not basically all of them did everything that they've never done before in the Matrix, because they were told not to go on the freeway. In the first movie, it's like run away from agents, and then of course Neo fought the agent. The second movie was like don't go on the freeway, don't go on the main grid. You wanna basically hide and run away traffic wise, because they can just take on anybody and trap you.
That
And
was
then
a
they
little bit of a shoehorn, though. The
for
well, the
for the
whole
traffic.
the idea that they've always talked about never going on the freeway. I mean, they
Hmm.
only mentioned that prior to going on the freeway. So, I mean,
Yeah.
as an audience member, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm willing to give that to you, but if they wanted to make that more impactful, it wouldn't have hurt them to mention it earlier, at
Hmm.
least in the second movie.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe in the first, I don't know, but
Yeah, I think it's completely a plot device for them, for an excuse to go on the freeway
I mean, and
and then
it makes
showcase
sense.
how badass Trinity is, right? Because Neo is basically overshadowing the other two so much, and they need a way to, keep them in the story as well. So like as far as like as powers of levels of badassness that they exhibit, so that's why they had to do that.
I know,
Um,
and it makes sense to not want to go on the freeway. I mean, there's lots of people
hmm.
that agents can jump into and
Yep.
control, and it's dangerous and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, the second movie they tried to do too much,
Hmm.
but I do respect. I do respect that they tried to expand the universe. I like that. I remember talking to a lot of people who had seen the second movie and were disappointed by it, and I
Hmm.
liked it, and definitely um, wanted to like it, and definitely was rooting for it
Hmm.
to be a good movie. But I recognize there were some flaws, but there were other people who just completely didn't like it, and I always thought that was a little unfair.
Well, because the first one was so good, you left the theater being enthralled by this universe, and the second
Yeah.
one, regardless how you feel after watching the first one, it's never gonna be able to match that
Well,
to
I don't
match that
agree with
expect.
that.
Yeah.
I don't agree that it's impossible to make a second movie that's as good as the first.
Well,
It's
not
it's
impossible. Just in this case, that happened. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that happened. I think it's very difficult to do that,
Hmm.
and part of the reason of that is especially if the first movie is such uh, a faithful retelling of the hero's journey, because then you come out with a sequel and it's like, okay, well, what does the hero do now? He's already been through the journey. And so
Yeah.
there's a few things you can do. You could have the hero become a mentor of a new hero and have that hero go through the hero's journey. Um, you could uh, you could have a much larger hero's journey that encompasses the trilogy. And I think they were sort of shooting for that, but didn't. I don't know. I guess it's hard to pull that off
Yeah.
because
It's hard to do multiple things in one movie. Like in today's universe, in today's world, we have a lot of movies that come out and just do part one, part two, literally in their subtitle, like title of the movie and then part one and then blah 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 and then part two, which audience now understand and allow for. And I think at the time it just didn't exist. I think if they have that capability or capacity or they
wait,
weren't.
are you saying that at the time the Matrix came out,
Hmm.
part one and part two didn't exist as a
Am I wrong?
concept?
Yeah, am I wrong?
Yeah, yeah, I think you're wrong.
Like, is there are you thinking about Lord of the Rings, or what are you thinking about that?
So
That
there's Godfather part one, part two.
Yeah, not okay,
There's
not in the way that not that's different. I'm talking about literally in the same year or same 6 month cycle. Um, you released a movie, and it's expected that the two movies would combine tell the whole complete story.
So okay,
Um,
so when what you're referring to is splitting a story in two parts and then telling the
yeah,
first half in one movie and the second half in another
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Even
not
when
talking
you
about.
even when you do that though,
Hmm.
each movie has to have a three-act structure.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's not satisfying as an audience member.
yeah, I agree. I agree. But if they were allowed to do that, I think they would have been not allowed. If they had done that, given the opportunity, it would have been. I would say that it would have been different. They would have merged the two, Matrix 2 and Matrix 3 in a way that it would be a little bit more consumable. If Because I feel like what you were saying is right. Like they were trying to do too much with this one because they were afraid that maybe part three might never come out, and so they tried to do everything. Um,
Well, I
and
think you got to make the best movie you can, regardless,
mm,
and not worry about you know the
yeah,
next movie.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, because you end up making a bad movie, then,
yeah,
which is what happened. I mean, I I, I don't want to say Matrix Reloaded was a bad movie. There were lots of good things about it,
hmm,
but it was flawed, definitely from a structural standpoint. It just
yeah,
oh, and we didn't even talk about another interesting character, the architect.
yes,
Like that was, I guess that scene was supposed to be, um, like part of the climax of the third act. But
hmm,
it seems like there had been previous, like the chase scene on the highway seemed like a climax to the third act, and
yeah,
that was like 20 minutes before the scene with the architect.
yeah. I had to watch it multiple times because it was so. First of all, it was like I didn't understand what the guy was talking about. So I had to watch it multiple times. Second, like it's so jarring, like how the scene, the atmosphere is very calm and collected, and like the pacing, it literally just came after an action sequence. So you're just like, what is going on? So I felt a little bit, discombobulated watching that scene. I had to watch it multiple times, like turn on subtitles because I couldn't understand the guy. He was talking a little bit too fast, and kind of just absorb the information, which I could have felt like maybe, in hindsight, now that I understand movies and plot structure, like maybe put it somewhere else. Um, but if you want to end there, it's maybe squeeze into a third movie because it just completely like I didn't know what to do at that
And by
point.
that
Like,
time, you're so exhausted from
yeah,
just. I mean, I don't know how long the second movie was, but it felt like 3 hours, something like that. And
it's like 2 hours something.
yeah, but it feels like three. And
No, I mean, because you're not a action person, so it can wipe you out pretty fast, like your battery. But for me, it was all right until that scene,
no, I'm
because I'm expecting an action movie, so I'm expecting all this, and then it went completely the opposite way, which is somewhat philosophical, kind of explaining stuff, exposition, right? And it just like, why are you dropping this here now? Like I'm on this train of kicking butt. Like I don't.
and so that yeah okay.
Yeah.
So two things that is explains what was really perfect about the first movie because they
Mm,
were able to address philosophical issues, namely um, the, living in a simulation and the implications of that and all that. But they were able to wed that with the action sequences and so
mm,
perfectly that and it
yep.
felt great. The second movie, there was like it wasn't melded together. The action, there were great action scenes and there was
Hmm.
interesting philosophy, but they weren't melded together
Yeah.
in a way that was satisfying.
Yeah. Because they
100%
have to
satisfying.
do. Yeah, you're right. They have to do a lot of expositions, and I remember, that scene that you like him fighting all this Agent Smith in the park. Right before that, that's he was meeting up with the Oracle to get, well, to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first movie, they drop little tidbits about the Matrix, from throughout the, it's like little breadcrumbs. Whereas here you get like an information, dump every every few minutes, and then you get an action sequence, and then you're like, "What's I need to process that stuff." And
Yeah,
so you never had time.
and one has to service the other. I guess that's the
Yeah.
other thing that that's the other point I'm trying to make is that
Mm.
the action in the first movie, you know, serviced the telling of the ideas in the first movie, whereas in the second movie it was like action then exposition dump, then action then exposition
Yeah.
dump, and they didn't seem to reinforce each other in the same way. And
Yeah.
it's a hard point
To
to
do.
describe from my, I just know when it works and when
Yeah.
it doesn't work, and it didn't quite work in the second. I mean, I still love the second movie, but I have to admit that it didn't work.
Yeah, it's hard to
100%.
do it. They whatever magic they got, it was, they couldn't get it again. But I loved it nonetheless because I feel like they had dived deeper into Agent Smith, which I really like because now I kind of, he literally broke all the rules similar to Neo in the first movie, and um, not following orders and going back to, I guess, like, wherever programs go to recycle. So he
The source.
he became basically a virus, and you literally see him infecting um, other programs and infecting whoever he can get his hands on to
Duplicating
spread.
himself. Yeah.
Yeah, basically what a computer virus does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. It's like they literally take the concept and make it into a visual thing, uh, duplicating and becoming a virus in the system. And I was like, huh, interesting.
And
It's
they
like I
did that
never thought.
with the back doors. And,
Yeah, yeah. It was very. I was like, all right, these are just terms, right? You like terms for like computer concept. You don't have. It's not like an actual thing, but the way the movie did it is an actual thing, which I thought was very clever.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
clever. It was clever. Um, yeah. So, and I get okay. So the third movie feels like it has much less going on in it than the first two movies. It was
Yeah.
basically more focused on the machines attacking Zion, and then I
Hmm.
guess and Neo fighting Agent Smith to the death.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not enough for a whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it it was already made, so yeah. Um, it was they should have left, like I said, right? If they were allowed to do, not allowed to do, if they have done partial one and like two and three, maybe that would be better. Take out certain part of second movie and put it into the third movie,
Yeah.
s- so that we don't feel so rushed. Uh, it would have
Easier
been
said
better.
than done, I suppose. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, very. I don't know anything about movie writing
mhm.
and and whatnot, but that's how I felt. It's just like, yeah, like you said, there was a battle. Because the third one, I felt at certain scene very slow. I'm like, I don't care about this. Like, why are you showing me people and their problems? Like, I don't care. I just want to see Neo being a badass again. And that's what I want to see. And then you can sprinkle all the other stuff. The philosophy behind that. To me, that was what I was focusing on. Because then there's all these, the end is near, and then people, dreading it, and all this random characters that you never seen before. And I just like, I don't care about these people. I
Mhm.
only care about Neo. And it was great seeing all the other people and seeing there's this whole, human fighting together, which is lovely. But I also was curious how they're gonna win, and they kind of didn't. Uh, then they got that ending part with the machines and the uh, Zion, which was, I thought, was epic. I thought that was really good. I liked that part. It was,
With the machine guns and
yeah, it was basically a dome, architecture, and this the way the machine is kind of like fish or squids or something. The way they like swim through the air, for lack of a better explanation. And their behavior was very swarm like. and I thought that was you felt very overwhelmed with that feeling, regardless. So love that stuff. Did you particularly care for certain things out of the third movie?
Yeah. Okay. So this time around, I only watched the first two movies, so it's been a while since I've seen the third.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I mean, I feel like I wanted more inside the Matrix and less in the real world.
Yes.
And but it was
Yes.
more. There was it was heavily. A lot of the scenes took place in the real world.
Do you think the Merovingians survive essentially the Matrix crash this time around?
Well, they didn't
Because
really address that.
yeah,
Did,
well, yeah, it's a theory because they didn't show that at all, right? Because in the second movie, they showed him, and he said, "I've survived your predecessors. I will
yeah.
survive you,"
Mm-hmm.
which makes me think like, what? Like, there's more than one Neo? You know, that's. And then when the architect explained it, that's when it hits me. And then of course after rewatching it, then I realized, and of course the third movie, but the Merovingian and other, he kept um, he kept certain things, right? He was such a powerful program, not on the level like Agent Smith, but he's powerful enough to know.
It's sort of
Um,
hinted that the Merovingian was a prior version of the one.
yeah, yeah. I was watching other film theories about that too, and it kind of curious how he has the capability to manipulate the Matrix or circumvent it in such a way that he can survive, one after another of essentially what
Well,
reboot, let's say it.
there's that whole train man sequence,
Yeah,
and that's where the programs can hide out when the Matrix is resetting itself.
yeah. I didn't really care for that. I was,
It's
I
just
thought it
like
was,
one more thing that they added on, and it's like at this point, wrap up the story. Don't add more to it.
yeah, I thought that scene or that whole subplot was kind of confusing, but I kind of understand why they need to do that because they need to make Neo in a limbo state or stuck between worlds. Um, but it was nevertheless confusing. I was like, I don't understand who he is and why he's so awesome in his little sub program that you can't beat him, and it's just like kind of annoying. Um, but again, I think they did that to show how badass Trinity was.
Mhm.
So yeah, I felt overwhelmed with that, but that makes sense, I suppose. Do you after the first movie, when you saw it, did you see? I mean, it's in your face, so there's a lot of religious innuendos and like references,
Mhm.
like literally in your face everywhere in the movie. Um, I had to go look up certain things. Did you completely appreciate that, or did you not care for it? You thought it was silly? Like, how do you feel about that?
What specifically are you referring to?
So Neo is one in reverse. Trinity is like, reference to the Trinity of uh, Christian religion.
Hmm.
Morpheus is like, I looked it up. It was like a Greek god or something, but there was just a lot. It was like a lot of names that are just, you know, um, religious references.
Hmm.
So yeah, Morpheus is like Greek gods that has to do with dreams, which makes sense because he wakes you up. He wakes Neo up.
Hmm.
So I thought that was appropriate, but everything else was just like a lot. Now that I come back to it, I'm like, okay, just chill out.
No,
Find some
I
other
like all that.
names. Yeah, yeah,
I don't have a problem with that.
yeah. I had to look up like certain ships named like the Nebuchadnezzars, and I was like, that's ridiculously long name for a ship.
It's like a Babylonian king.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, can you just I don't know pick any other names, but that was cool, and they drop hints of that everywhere, especially in the end, right? How Neo goes out in the third movie, um, and then in the first one he essentially came back from life, and that was he got murdered by the Agent Smith, and he just came back. He broke all the rules. He shouldn't have been back, but I thought that was in your face kind of moment. How do you feel about that?
About what?
Neo coming back
Well, yeah, I mean that's the traditional. Um, are you talking about in the first movie or after the
in the
third
first
movie?
movie.
Okay. Um, that's the traditional hero's journey arc. There's a death and resurrection, and most stories, the death and resurrection is sort of metaphorical. The hero has experienced something that changes him, and so his old self is no longer there, and there's new. He's a new self. Um, it's typically not a literal death and resurrection,
Yeah.
but it worked perfectly. I love that scene where he gets up and then he can stop the bullets after that, and it's it's a great scene, and the music is awesome, and it's just
Yeah.
it's
It,
perfect. It really is a perfect third act climactic scene, I think.
he I think the way they did that scene kind of explained to me because like I said, I'm a visual person, and when he woke up the second time and kind of saw the matrix for what it is, like he saw the code,
Mm-hmm.
that to me explained so much, and then I could then kind of accept what he was capable of doing. Like early on in the movie, you saw him did this, which is super culturally, famous event, which is the Matrix bullet bending. Um, and then if you didn't know already, I think you do. Among other scenes, like the receiving the phone call in the office, that scene alone, when he bends and dodged bullets, that by far has been replicated through other TV show, cartoons. Like you have got to acknowledge that you've seen it somewhere else, right? The Matrix, the
Yeah,
bending, yeah, it just
bullet time.
yeah, it's super cultural like impact, right? And it makes sense after he wakes up when he saw the agents in green code, and I was like, oh, I was like profoundly satisfied, and I was like, okay, I get it, how he can do all this crazy stuff because he kind of understand how everything works in that universe. So I was like, I was jumping for joy, I guess, when that happened, and I wanted more of that, right? So which is why I'm less critical of Matrix Reloaded because he was doing all of that. He was flying, stopping bullets. He was just doing all crazy stuff, and it was all under the fuse of the Matrix. So it's it's basically a superhero movie before we have our current superhero movie trends, which is why it's so awesome. And then in the real world, he's just a normal dude. How do you enjoy like the uh, contrasting difference between the Matrix and the real world?
In the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. The Matrix is tinted green. The real world is tinted blue. Um, that's interesting. I I think the scenes in the real world, in the second movie, there might be too many of them because the real world,
Mm.
it's hard to pull that off, right?
Hmm.
It's a ravaged healthscape, and they're flying hovercrafts around in the sewers in the massive sewer systems of the old cities, and um, it. I don't know. It's the Matrix. The Matrix itself. It's always seemed more interesting to me than the real world. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I thought that was
a way to balance that out would be to make less of the real world in order to make that more interesting because there's less of it. But they seem
yeah.
to want to have more and more of the story take place in the real world, and so that sort of
Well,
dampened it down for me a little bit.
yeah. Well, I was curious about the real world to extend us like how many more badass people are there, and you never really see that too. See some of it, but not too much, right? Because Neo and Trinity and Morpheus the core characters. But I did notice that the real world is very grimy, which is of course makes sense. But they like coming into the third movie, you can even in the second movie, you can kind of see they kind of depending on all these mechanical machines like stuff, right? Very submarine feels, because everything has to be underground. It's very heavy, metallic, grimy, dirty kind of submarine vibe to it. Uh, no sunlight, but in the Matrix, it's very pleasant, right? Rewatching it, I was like, yeah, I could see like in depending on who I was, totally be a Cyrus character, right? The one of the I guess bad guy that betray the crew because he wanted to
Oh,
go back in.
I know who you're talking about in the first
Yeah.
movie.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
I forget the actor's name, but he's in The Sopranos, and
he's in a lot of things, and he
he's in
always play always play that kind of character.
yeah, sleazy guy.
I was watching Joe Pantoliano,
Yeah,
Cypher, not Cyrus. I was talking to I think friends and coworkers, and someone said it's like, yeah, they'd love to be in the Matrix, and essentially doing what he does, right? And I was like, given the choice, would you want to be Neo? Would you want, or would you want to just, nope, I'm gonna chill, because now that you know how terrible and unsatisfying and cold and the eaten goop.
yeah.
I was like,
So
yeah,
so
I kind of see his point. I probably do the same thing. It was like, not interested in suffering all that much. So
yeah, that was an interesting uh, philosophical issue that they addressed. Like, is it better to be free and live in a horrible environment, or is it better to be a slave and be comfortable?
yeah,
And yeah, I mean that's a tough question to answer. And this gets us to the whole question of, I mean, there's a lot of talk now about, are we living in a simulation now?
hmm
Um, do you have any thoughts on that?
um, I was thinking that it doesn't matter because frankly, even if so it's like, let's say if you do know, like for real know, is there a way for you to hijack and do cool stuff and do what you wanted to do? Because if you don't, it's just gonna be so miserable knowing that you're living in a simulation. Um,
Well,
um,
and well, what's the purpose of, if we are living in a simulation? What would be the purpose of that?
entertainment
So entertainment in that we've
that we are
somehow
into.
we've
Yeah,
somehow become part of that entertainment would be us not remembering what the real world was like, right?
yeah, yeah. So the idea of a simulation is that some being like us created, a fake universe and created like basically AI, and just to see things running out, just to see how things turns out, and we're a part of that. So if the Matrix is real and we're in it, the question I have is like, can you break out? And if you can't, is there a way for you to kind of like understand and prove it, right? And if you can't, then just that doesn't matter. You're just you have no superpowers and you can't really do anything anyway. So
So,
knowing that would be terrible. I'd rather not know.
well, that's the Alan Watts description of the universe. It's not necessarily that we're in some sort of computer
Mm,
simulation, but it's more like, there's nothing. Nothingness is the true nature of the universe,
mm,
and um, the this experience that we're having is born from nothingness. It's an illusion, and but the purpose of it is just to experience it and to, it's sort of entertainment in a sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the Matrix or the simulation in the Matrix, it was it was a form of control, and the machines were harnessing the electricity generated by human bodies to run
Yeah.
themselves. So, but it was a way of tricking the humans into playing that role.
hmm
So I mean, in that way, that humanity was a slave. to the machines. But in the Alan Watts uh, idea of
Model.
a
Yeah.
simulation, we're not slaves. Um, we're just sort of entertaining ourselves.
Yeah. I was yeah, because now when this movie came out, I was just like on the internet reading forums basically back then. Now people just go to Reddit or Twitter or something, and they got all the stuff they need, or even YouTube, right? People I'm sure will make YouTube videos discussing this way back when you just go on internet forums and basically read down. I just basically read down threads and kind of just theorize. But with the advent of like since this movie came out, people relate this to a lot of like AI and computer stuff. And I think the bigger one is like you said with Alan Watson and whether or not which is in a bigger existence kind of made up existence. Either way, I think you being unable to snap out of it or wake up, it's just like sure you can question all day long. It just once you do can like prove it to at least yourself or understand the difference between the two, then that's when the choice matter, right? Because right now it's just like I don't really have a choice, so that's okay. But when you have that capability, that's when the choice comes in, and do you want to break out or not? That's the trick. Which to this movie, now that I watch it a few times, I always thought, and I don't know if you were a fan enough to watch The Matrix animated, which is like
Yeah,
another DVD.
I have
Yeah.
seen that. Yep.
So the Wachowski work with a bunch of animators, and they kind of pan out even more of the universe. But in this one, if you watch this movie alone, the question as I always have is like, you know, the computers or robots didn't have to deal with human beings. They could once they own the control, they could just easily wipe us out and use any other animals, right? I have to I have to theorize that other animals make more electricity than we do because they literally stick human beings in pods, right? And I was like, wait, how many billions of people are there, and do you really need all that many people? Like all these questions, like logistic came up, right? Kind of ruins the movie. But I was like, um, I don't think we need that many people. Like they could literally just kill us all off and not need human beings ever. They don't have to build the Matrix for us to be asleep in. They could have just done that for anything else, right?
Well,
And it's
so
just
there
like,
was a theme that was addressed in the second movie about, the machines need us and we need them.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
there, and so animals can't make machines. Only
Mm,
humans can make machines. So
yeah,
there's that issue. But I guess you could say, well, once the machines have been made, then the machines can make themselves, and they no longer need people to make them. But
yeah.
put
I
that
think
aside.
the only
The
Neo
hold
is
on,
needed. Yeah.
hold on. So there's there's that issue, but the there are also forces within the machine mind, like the Oracle,
Mm,
that seem to have compassion for the humans on some level, and
yeah.
so I mean, it it's not just a question of the machines surviving. There was like a symbiotic, and I haven't
Yeah.
totally thought this through. So
Yeah, no, I know why.
yeah,
The reason is they need Neo. So like the architect or any of them have realized that they need a Neo every so many cycles. They will have a situation like a Agent Smith or Mr. Smith. Eventually they will have a virus and or a Neo situation. So they need a reboot capability and um, if it wasn't a virus or something else, only humans can come up with a Neo solution. So that might be why they keep us around. But other than that, like in other cycles, like before Neo was around, I'm not sure why they would have a reason other than like this time is to deal with the virus Agent Smith. But previously, I wonder why they care at all. So that's my excuse for this movie, for the current Matrix movies that we're watching. Like I get it, like why they would care about us, but like you said, they programs like the Oracle kind of feel certain,
Well,
I
probably
guess.
when the Matrix, when the machines took over, there were just more people than any other type of animal readily available to use as a
Yep,
power source. So there's
yep,
that.
yep. In whatever the Matrix universe is, we managed to kind of like our real world. We managed to go, extinct every other species, and there's just a lot of us, so it's convenient.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
awesome sauce.
there might be some connection between consciousness, like human consciousness, and energy production that um, we're
Mm,
overlooking. But I don't know. That's
yeah.
just a stab in the dark.
Cool. Any closing thoughts on the Matrix?
Look, well, for this episode of our podcast in particular, um, it was a little bit of an experiment on my part in that we didn't go into this with an outline of like specific topics to discuss.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like, and we also didn't discuss the plot of the movies
Hmm.
that much. Whereas before, when we've discussed movies, we've gone and we've made a point to go into the plot.
Hmm.
So, what do you think about that?
I like it more because here's why. Like, if someone's looking for a podcast and or a video on YouTube about certain subject, right? Like, let's say you're curious about whatever book or something, then they've already consumed some material of that subject. Like, so there's no need to. I know, like all these YouTubers kind of do spoilers before their video clip, but it only works if that information is super new. For example, there's a movie coming out, XYZ movie, and you've seen it before everybody else, then yeah, it makes sense to do spoilers. But like for stuff that we do, it's just been out
Well,
forever.
not as a spoiler, but just as a way to put the
Bring
information into a framework
Yeah,
in
I
order
think
to to
for
discuss it.
yeah, I think we can do that for explaining what we're gonna do, but for like plot wise, it just especially for movies, like if for books, if you haven't read something, we're gonna tell you a little bit about it. But for movies, it's just like go watch the movie and come back. Like this podcast or audio file or video file will be here. There's no need to me, it's a little bit redundant, but to loop people in and bring everybody on the same page, that part makes sense. Like we can do that. How do you think that it went?
I think. Well, I don't know. I felt like the energy level on this one was a little bit low, um, and so it'll be interesting to hear it in the playback. I just think for my own purposes, in order to talk about it,
Mm,
it I think I need to discuss the plot a little bit more, just for my
sure.
own, just in order to bring the ideas out
Hmm.
uh, into my own mind, and then to and then to discuss them
Formulate, yeah.
in a structured way.
Yeah. I mean, wherever works for you. Typically, I go into something noticing like one or two things or thoughts I've already had about it for a long time that I didn't bring up with anybody, and that's how I usually do it. So like certain things that I question or was always curious about,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember to, which I usually do, I'll bring it up, and kind of
That's
we kind of play with it.
Yeah. I mean, and okay, and that's another point. I think in most of our other podcasts, there was a point at which I stumbled upon an idea that I had not previously thought about.
Hmm.
In the process of making the podcast, and I feel like that experience didn't happen to me this time around. Um,
Mm.
so I'm just trying to think that through. Um,
That's never happened to me, so I'm not, for every one of them. Wow, That's curious.
Pretty much,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Even for stuff you already consumed multiple times.
Yes.
I think the dynamics, or you said that we're kind of chill out more on this episode, is I think it's because we agreed a lot on this thing. Where we have more dynamics or more,
Or where we
I
disagree.
guess debates is when there's disagreement or fights, I suppose. But because I don't know, I just like this movie too much. There's nothing for me to say because it's like looking at a really nice painting or something. You're like, yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
there's nothing for me to critique it because I like it. I wish everybody go watch it, and hopefully one day I won't like it as much. But still, right now
Hopefully.
yeah, I mean, one day I might like something more, and then if you bring up the Matrix, I'm like, ah, that's so old and gross and unnecessary. We have this other new thing, but for the moment, nothing that come out since the Matrix where it have pulled me in a certain way, right? Like compared to all the other sci-fi's greats that we know of, like they didn't do a remake, they did a sequel to, geez, now I have to look it up. Um, I want to say Harrison Ford, and it's Sci-Fi Escape. Uh, what was it called? Android World Universe kind of thing. What is it here? We found it. Blade Runner. So they did
Mhm.
a Blade Runner sequel, right? Like a follow up, and
Yeah.
it didn't jive with me. Now if you like it, we probably could go into it and talk about why. But
I liked it.
stuff.
I wasn't passionate about it, but I've never really been a big Blade Runner guy. I mean, it's very.
But when it came out originally, it was a big deal, no? I mean, there's a whole cult following of
It
Blade
was a big
Runner.
deal, but I wasn't part of that
Part of
big
that,
deal. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm whatever the Matrix is, I'm part of that. When it came out, I was like, this is the best ever. And until something else happened where it overshadowed that, I'm most likely gonna feel the same way about the Matrix series. Um, who knows? I might feel very very dissatisfied with it, with Matrix 4 or something else. But for the moment, it's a cornerstone of sci-fi movie for me. So I
Yeah. No,
definitely a big fan.
it's a great movie. Definitely.
Yeah, a little biased, so it's hard to have a discussion. But I think I have a good idea for next upcoming podcast. So no worries. I think I know where to go. Lead us so we can have a lively discussion again.
Okay.
So,
Do you want to
so
discuss that now or
yeah, I think I'm gonna introduce you to John Wick. It's an action movie. So much action that you probably gonna hate it. So we'll find
why
out.
do you think I don't like action?
So it's on the borderline of action with no plot, and it was very like not thin. It just the plot is there. It's might or might not be compelling enough for the main character to do all this stuff. And I mean, you seem to like certain action sequences from stuff that we talked about before. So I don't know if you've ever been, you know, I would say exposed to Hong Kong cinema's type of action, and John Wick is a really good breaking ground into that. So,
All right, let's do it.
all right. Any shout? I want to shout out to our one commenter as always, and hopefully we'll get more. The more we shout out to him, we'll get more followers like him.
Has there been a recent comment?
No.
No.
Not enough, but it's still worth it for me to shout out because we want people like Vernon Nielsen from whatever episode he commented on, and feel free to comment on this as
episode 1, I believe.
Yeah, see how you like or don't like the Matrix, and especially with second one, the Matrix Reload, how you feel about that, and we'll see you in the comments.
All right, sounds good.
See ya.
Bye. Hello, listeners. This is George with the Epic Meta Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Did you know that you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube? You probably knew that one of those was the case, but the other ones are the case as well. Please be sure to click the like button if that's in accord with your reality. You can also share our podcast with your friends, give us a 5-star rating, and all of that. Please also give us your comments. Be very interested to read them. But more importantly than all of that, just continue to listen to the show. And as Thang would say, be good and be well until we meet again.